Hello again and welcome back to our course on Project 2019 Advanced. In this and the next few sections, I'm going to look in some detail at costs. Once again, I'm going to assume that you have good basic knowledge of using costs in Project 2019, and I'm going to look at some aspects that you either may not have come across so far, or perhaps where you need to know a little bit more about the detail of when and why you would use these tools and techniques and how to get the best out of them. Now, in this first section on costs, I'm going to take a look at fixed task costs. It's probably the case that with many of the projects that you manage, a very large proportion of the costs are associated with the use of resources. And of course, this could be the cost of work resources, the amount that you pay people to do various tasks, and it can be the cost of the materials that are used as well. But sometimes you have costs which are fixed costs for specific tasks, and I'm going to demonstrate this one with a particular example in the building project that we looked at earlier on. Now, in that building project, under the summary task services, there was a task connect to services, and you can see it there, task number 32. And very often with this kind of task, or perhaps with a task associated with a legal cost or a regulatory cost, there is a fixed part to the cost. So, for example, in the case of a house build, there may be costs associated with connecting the house supplies to the services that are provided locally. So, for instance, connecting to the water supply or connecting to the electricity supply. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to assume that in this locale, the fixed cost of connecting to services is $295 US. This isn't a cost for resources, this isn't a cost for people working on it, and it isn't a cost for material. It's a cost associated with the specific task of connecting to services. Now, the way that you would enter a cost like this is via the cost table. So what I'm going to do now is to switch from the entry table to the cost table. And let's start by having a look at what's in the cost table. By default, the cost table contains a fixed cost column, a fixed accrual column, they're the ones that we're going to use now, and then you have a total cost, baseline cost, variance, actual, and remaining, which is just hidden behind our Gantt charts. And I'm going to talk about some of these other costs as we go through the next section. But in this particular case, the fixed cost for connecting to services, we'll just put it in here as $295. Now, we also have the question of how this cost is accrued, and I'm actually going to look at cost accrual in the next section. But for the moment, I'm going to record this cost as being accrued at the start, which is what I have as my default option just there. Now, notice that this task now has a total cost of $295. And the baseline cost, as we haven't saved a baseline here, is $0. So at the moment we have a variance of $295, and the remaining cost to incur is also $295. Now, if you have assigned a fixed cost to a task, you still need to assign other costs. So if, for example, a member of my team had to spend time here or a few hours getting involved in connecting to services, that can still be added to the cost of this task. So this is a fixed cost, often paid to an external party, and often, as I say, associated with things like standard charges, legal costs, regulatory costs, and so on. Now, I switch to the website project here, and you'll see that one of the tasks in the website project has a fixed cost of $2,000. It's only possible to record one fixed cost against a task, but if you actually have more than one fixed cost to apply, what you would normally do is to add those costs together to give a total and put the total in the fixed cost column there. And then it's always a good idea to put in a note explaining that fixed cost. So if I go into this particular task here, so task 2, by double clicking and jumping across to that Notes tab, I could put an explanation into here explaining that fixed cost. And in this case, it says it's being provided by Trevor in the contracts department and covers the preparation of ITTs, distribution and initial processing of responses, as well as all associated discussions and costs. So if you had more than one fixed cost, you could list them there and explain what each cost was and where you got that figure from. Now, with fixed task costs, there's one other special case that can sometimes occur. Let's suppose that you are getting external consultancy on something from an expert. And let's suppose, for example, in the case of this tendering process contract task, we also need to appoint a consultant to help us with that. And the consultant doesn't charge on an hourly basis, but charges a fixed cost for their services. Now, what you can do in this situation is to set the work resource up for the consultant on the basis that their standard rate is 0, but there is a cost per use. So let me jump across into the resource sheet, and I'm going to add a new resource. So their standard rate is going to be $0 per hour, but the cost per use is, say, $400. So that is the consultant's fixed cost for providing consultancy on a contract. Now in this case, I'm going to say that this is accrued, but I'm going to say it's accrued at the end, and the rest of this I'm fairly happy with. So let's jump back to the Gantt chart and let's assign that resource. So you should be pretty used to doing this now. So now if we jump back into the information for that task, so double click and click on the Resources tab, which we're already on, you can see that I now have 2 resources assigned. So Deborah Ashby was assigned before with a unit of 0.05 and a cost of $800. But I now also have the contract consultant assigned, and the contract consultant's cost is $400. So it's not prorated, and in fact it's not accrued until the task is complete. And in addition, for this particular task, I have a fixed cost of $2,000. So that's a full explanation of the breakdown of the cost for this task. That's it for this section. In the next section, we're going to look at accruals, so I will see you then.